You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
Hi everybody and welcome to Gems in Comms series special brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels. I'm your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with Nadia Haynes, who is the founder of the Glass Hive. And she specialises in PR and digital communications. So welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's great. I'm really happy that you're here to share your journey with us. So essentially, I always like to start off by saying that the podcast series special, I kind of created it because I wanted to give people of melanated hues, people from the global majority, their flowers that are, working in the industry and have managed to carve out a great career for themselves, essentially. So kudos to you and well done to you.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So, of course, I'd like to start off by asking you to tell us a bit about yourself. Like, what is it that you do, and have you always wanted to work in the comms/PR industry?
Thank you so much, Ebony, for the lovely introduction and for giving me my flowers as well. So my journey into comms started a long, long time ago. In fact, I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And so I've pretty much, I guess I'll be giving my age away, but I've committed and dedicated more than half of my life to this industry, and it brings me so much joy and fulfillment. So how that came about, 14-year-old Nadia would have been in year 9, and one day I happened to go into my parents' room. They had a TV on and Open University was on, and there was a number of people talking about radio plugging, TV plugging, and then PR. And so I leaned in, was listening, and learned about how PR and journalism, how journalism and PR, how they worked together. And of course, years back, there would have been a bit of contention when it comes to PRs and journalists and who actually does what and what and such. But with that, I'd already developed a passion for writing. I was a part of a journalist club at school where we would write and exchange news stories with a school in Italy. And then I just put 2 and 2 together and thought, actually, I could be a PR. I could help people create their messages from behind the scenes. No one would need to know, but I can make people shine, basically. And that was the whole. That was a whole.
Pretty amazing because you were so young, like 14 as well, to be like getting switched onto it. Like I didn't have a clue about PR. A bit much more later. So I think it's really interesting.
Thank you. And I always say, if it wasn't for the fact that it was in my school reports, in my NRA, and that I hadn't had letters as well for work experience that I didn't get, by the way, people probably wouldn't believe me because, of course, people can say whoever they want to be today. But I've got the proof there. And I've kept to it. I've got the receipts, as the young ones would say. Absolutely. So with that, that was the pull. Literally, it was seeing that I could actually help people from behind the scenes and amplify their voices. The initial area that I wanted to explore was music. I loved music so much. I still do. But at that point, oh my goodness, music, that was all I cared about, and writing. And so by 1998, I'd managed to get the phone number for a marketing department at a very well-known record company. And I would call them all the time. I'd call them at school. I'd call them when I got home from school, because of course school finishes at 3:30 back then. And of course, the offices, everyone's in until 5, 6 o'clock. So I would ring, and I managed to get 3 names, and I just continued to call them, and to a point that they started to send me, free music, and
Oh,
they would encourage me as well. They didn't push me away, which I think
that's really good.
was such a blessing for me. If I look
Yeah.
back, and I'm still in contact with them, till today,
That's
forever
amazing.
indebted to them. And by the time I got to the age of 17, we were now on nickname terms. And I remember calling and saying, "Can I come into the office now?" And they said,
Oh,
"Nads, yeah, you can come in."
oh.
That's where that started. So that's where the marketing came in. And
Right.
so although it wasn't public relations, it gave me my first taste of what it's like to be within a media-led environment. The only difference was is that it was marketing, club promotions, and such. And so I was there for quite some time, and then I actually, whilst I when I actually was called in. By then I was actually at the Brit School, and I was
I went
studying.
Bristol.
You went to Brit School as well. Okay, so we're alumni. I love that. I
I went
love,
Bristol. Like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
Dr.
So
Brown.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I went to Brit. Funnily enough, everyone that knew that I was at the Brit School thought I had gone for dance, because I had gone to stage school from childhood and done dance. Like I'd done all of the, contemporary ballet, tap, you name
Yeah.
it. I did it. Street dancing, everything. Because I already had this seed that had been planted for me to get into public relations. I knew that I needed a route in through my education. At that point, by the time I finished at Brit School, I then went on to university to study public relations with media and design management at the University of Huddersfield. But if we look at that time frame with public relations, when it comes to courses, there were only 11 institutions
Yeah.
across the UK island at that point that did PR.
Yeah.
One of the London universities that I had considered had just changed their name. It was Guildhall, and they changed to London Met, and they had removed their PR course that they had there. So I went out,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, from there, did my degree. I After my first year, I'd already acquired a work placement at a very well-known PR company, which later on was bought by another big conglomerate.
Amazing.
And the journey has just continued ever since. I've had a number of exposures to different types of industries, and all of them have a story behind it. I mean, a lot of my comms experience came through working in public services and the government, and that foot in the door actually came about in the most, I'd say, the most random of ways. I was a student, went back to town early to Huddersfield to see if I could find a job. Saw a sign saying that there was a job at a phone store. Called up the phone number, and then I found myself working for the Department for Constitutional Affairs.
Oh, wow.
And the rest is
It's just like, yeah, it's a nice little one, isn't it?
right, right. And so the rest is history. From then, I always, in between my studying, whenever I came back for the long summer breaks, I worked for the government in different departments, but I always made it a point to glean from everywhere that I worked. And graduated 2005, and with that, of course, I was stuck between staying in Yorkshire because I made a life for myself there, or coming back to London. And my dad, he was like, "No, come back, come back."
Yeah, of course. And he wants to go home.
Right, right. Whereas my mum was, she said, "Oh no, you should stay there." In the end, I moved back to London. It wasn't easy finding actual PR work. I found that the work that would come in, a lot of it was agency, temping. I'd always get a call back, but never anything permanent.
Yeah.
And that was quite disheartening, to be honest. And at that point, I still wanted to work in music, but it got to maybe a year or two, and I started to pull myself away from the music space and really hone in on public service. And I also tapped into a bit of freelancing as well. And it was through the freelancing that, again, a new seed was sown, which was that I should consider going it alone and setting up my own thing. But for me, someone that had always looked at life very linear, still do, I thought, oh, I felt unqualified. I thought, well, I've got this experience, but by the same token, I haven't gone through all of the stages that I had to set up in my mind. That, oh, okay, well, I need to be an assistant first, and then I need to, become a manager, and so forth and so forth. And then maybe I might be made partner or something. And then I get to 50, and then I might set up my own business. But yeah, God had other plans, clearly.
Plan, right? Yeah.
Because I ended up taking the second time experiencing this, actually, early redundancy. I was working for a government organisation, and at the time, leadership at the time was David Cameron, and he decided to close it. And so with that, I thought, well, I need to find something else. Couldn't find anything. After about 2 months, I said, okay, I'm just going to try this by myself.
Yeah.
And I got online, I incorporated the Glass Hive. In fact, actually, when I first incorporated, I was playing about with a number of different names. And so my first incorporation of the first iteration of the Glass Hive was a B network. Because I was thinking, oh, well, Flourish, I can't use that name because I've met the lovely people who actually ran a company called Flourish in Guildford, and they do wonderful graphic designs and such. So I love that idea of carrying a message across and causing things to flourish. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll call it the B Network. And then I found that, and I'm sure that you've experienced this as well, or heard from other fellow consultants and business owners, that really before you do any of that, you should see if a domain name is available. Yeah. So yeah, with that, I remember literally the same afternoon, I ended up changing the name to the Glass Hive. And then I had looked for a part-time job as well, because I thought, well, I still need money to come in at the moment. And so I took a part-time role at the Institute of Psychiatry, where I was writing journals and supporting one of the doctors, professors there, excuse me. And with that, that's where the Glass Hive was birthed. It was through being in a space where I couldn't find any work, and knowing that I had the skill set, and having that, I guess it was that encouragement as well. There was actually two people that really encouraged me a few years prior. One was a client that I was working with in fashion, and then the other was an old colleague of mine when I'd actually worked in the fitness industry as well. And I remember that particular person, he said to me, why are you not doing this for yourself? You've got all of the experience, really good. But my mind, I'd already said it in my mind that no, I need to go through all of these levels.
Yeah.
And I would get interviews, don't get me wrong, I would get interviews, but a lot of it was always because people were curious about where I had worked, more so. It's like, oh, so how was it working there? Oh, what are they like over there?
It's like a investigation they do.
Right. That was the vibe that I'd always get. So I set up my my business. Got cold feet maybe 3 years in because I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know how to run a business properly. So I was running it, but but I felt really unqualified. That's the only word that I could use. But fast forward, it came to 2017, and I thought, you know what? No, I need to go full throttle now. And at that point, I was working in central government. And with that, I left, even though my boss at the time, bless him, I've got so much time for Alistair. He came in to convince me to stay. and, and I had a number of other peers and colleagues who had done exactly the same thing. But I just had this, it was just impressed in my heart that no, Nadia, you really need to go and make this work now. And the only difference now with stepping back out full time was that I now felt confident in the fact that I'd managed to glean from all of the different industries the commercial aspect of running a business and apply that to my business. Yeah. So my plan between 2017 and 2018, now that I was now on my own payroll as full time as opposed to part time, was that I needed to spend at least a couple of months to a year, that's what I'd set in my mind, to work out processes of running a business and how I would onboard clientele, how I would reach out to potential, to prospects, and also how I would like to build my organisation in terms of the experience that staff would have and such. But before 2018 had even kicked off properly, I ended up with a few clients. So I was doing that in between. Yeah. And, over the years, it's just been a learning experience from the business aspect. Yeah. And also it's really been a journey of this staying ahead, of industry, of industry changes and making sure that I'm still, building on my skill set as well. For me, I believe that learning, that doesn't stop in life. It doesn't stop in industry either. You have to continue, you have to continuously build on your experience, on your knowledge, because the world's constantly changing. I mean, public relations that I was exposed to all those years ago back in
very different, isn't it now?
It's very different. Yeah. Even to the point that even doing something like this today, massive thing for me. Because for me, as I said earlier on,
behind the scenes, right?
Behind the scenes, no one need know. Even to a point, even with the fact that I have a business, I didn't own that. I always used to say, I'm a PR first and a business owner second. That was my phrase for so many years.
Wow.
So many years.
Okay.
Which
it's an interesting format because usually you'd say I'm a business owner, but I run my PR agency or consultancy. So I think that's really interesting.
Right.
Interesting. It's just a mindset, isn't it? It's just kind of think of things and phrase things. I get
definitely.
That. I think that's an interesting way that you started out. So you were attracted to it from a young age, and you've kind of followed your path to university to work in, and then because of the circumstance, it helped you create your own business. But then you kept working and kept it on the side, and then finally, you know what, I'm going to go full throttle now. So I think that's an interesting journey in itself. Definitely interesting.
Thank you.
I wanted to get a little bit into your kind of lived experience in the sense of, I always ask my guests that, obviously you're aware, I'm aware I'm a black girl, you're aware you're a black lady. But when did you become aware of your ethnicity as a younger person in the world, So for me, it was, I've always known, who I am, but I became more aware of it once I started to hear about Chelsea Smilers, who were racist thugs that would target black and brown people. And I was a first year going off to secondary school. So I was about 11.
Okay.
So that was a bit like, obviously, I've seen things like Mississippi Burning. I've seen things, but in my own world, like where this is my little bubble, this is where it met my bubble, and I was a bit like, okay, quite a stark, moment of okay, got to keep your head in the swivel. Someone's going to try and hurt you just because of your beautiful skin. You
Yeah.
just got to do it. So did you have a moment like that, or maybe not?
So my first experience of racism was actually something that I had personally witnessed that happened to my father, where we were in a car driving somewhere in North London. I could have only been about 9, 10 years old, and there was some sort of protest going on, and we'd got caught up in that area. And what happened was that my dad was at the traffic lights, and I was sat in the back. My mum sat in the passenger side, and back then in the early 90s, people would always ask for directions. While I was lined up next to another car. So the person was signaling my dad. So my dad then put the window down, and they squirted some water, like a water pistol. Thank God it was just water.
Yeah, thank
Her
goodness.
face,
Wow.
and that was my introduction to
Yeah.
being, actually.
But as a young child, you're like, why would they do that? Like, you've got to process it.
Right.
And thank God it was just water, because that could have been acid or something, because those days they were doing all kinds of things like that. So that's scary.
Yeah, it was. And so, skinheads in the car. So that was my first time seeing, I'd seen on the news, but that was my first time actually seeing skinheads and doing such. But then for myself now, where I guess, so in my formative years of studying in primary school, or I think must have been actually in nursery, there was only myself, then my best friend who is mixed, and then maybe 2, 3 Asians in our class, and everyone else was Caucasian. So with that, I guess I hadn't really, in the early days, I hadn't really actually acknowledged that, oh, okay, you're black, you're different, you're this, you're that. To be honest, I just got on with life, and although I've experienced racism, for me, I never let my race or my background or anything like that stop me from getting to where I want to get to. I didn't use that as a crutch, although I've certainly experienced a number of microaggressions and such. I never let that put me off of applying for a job, for example, or attending a networking event in the early days of trying to make it in this industry. One experience though that sticks out, and it wasn't, I guess this was where I felt, I think probably the first time that I felt, oh crumbs, I'm the only one here, and I stick out. I had a job interview at a very well-known spin doctor's office, I'll say it that way, at the time. And I went to the interview with my natural hair, my afro, and this would have been about 2006, 2007. And you could have heard a pin drop when I walked into the office.
Wow.
Everyone's suited and booted. And I've walked in, got my suit on, got my fro. It was big, not that big, baby. It was there. It's my hair,
crown,
my crown, my crown. So then I stepped in, and the interview was done in. Do you know there's the term fishbowl? These
that's all fishbowl. Yeah.
Right. So my interview was in a fishbowl with everyone else, just
everybody watching,
talking,
please looking at what's going on.
Right. And that's the only time that I've ever felt, oh my goodness, my race is being looked at right now, as opposed to what I can bring to the organisation.
Yeah.
That's the only time that I personally I've felt that. Like I said, there's been microaggressions.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of that, but I try, to just ignore it, because at the end of the day, I know what I need to do, and I know who I am as well, and what I can bring to an organisation. Same goes for clients as well.
Of course, because it's not about you questioning your skill set in that sense, because you know you've got the skill set, but we just know that there are people that have their own prejudices. But you've already actually asked a couple of my questions. And my next question for you was, have you ever felt like your race ethnicity has held you back? And you said that you never let it hold you back. Then I was going to ask you, have you experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace? And how was it handled? So obviously the interview you went through, definitely giving racism. But have you, obviously that was for an interview. Have you actually worked in an organisation where there's been certain things that happened in the office environment, and maybe you might have spoken up, or maybe you didn't feel empowered to speak up? Has there anything like that kind of happened?
Yes. In fact, there was a place that I worked at in comms, and it started actually from the very moment of my first day of work. I was left in the reception for 2 hours.
What? Wow. You were left there for 2 hours.
For 2 hours. And then I remember eventually one of the other directors who had also interviewed me, he came. So he came into the reception. I think he'd gone to get a coffee. And then he said, "Oh, Nadia, you're here," And so then he's the one that actually took me to the office. Wow. I saw my manager sat there behind the desk, and I said, "Good morning," called her name.
Wow.
And she was the one that was meant to be meeting me. And there was a lot of things, that this took place at that time between the two of us. There was just a lot of, I would say, microaggression. And later on down the line, that person then left. And the head of, one day he just said to everybody, "Gather around." And then he explained her experience. And then everything started to make sense. That, okay, yes, there could have been an element of racism there, but also I think it was a matter of the fact that I had experience, whereas that person had fallen into the job just because they knew a lot of people. And so when that department was being created,
right,
they moved in there, but their background was not in comms at all, far from it.
And then here comes you with this great experience, and so someone was a bit disjointed about that, clearly.
I believe so, yes. And the reason why I can say I believe so is just because of what was then later on said once that person had gone. It was a very random, "Hi everybody, everyone gather around," and then started breaking down that person's background. And I thought, "Oh, this is interesting."
Yeah.
Never experienced that before. But
Never heard that one before.
It actually gave me some peace inside, quietly, that, okay, I wasn't, imagining any of this. And really, the problem was never with me, it was with them.
It never is with us, to be honest.
No, it's not.
It's always going to be them, because if they've got the issue, the race or whatever the case is that they've got, that's your issue. It's just that you just now put it on us. Yeah. So I think that's interesting that she left you down there for 2 hours. That's disgusting. And what a way to be welcomed, and that feeling.
Cold.
And then you come in and say you make the effort to greet her, and she still decides not to greet you. So navigating that relationship must have been quite tricky. It must have been quite.
It was. But I just tried to just remain as professional as could be, and just tried not to let it affect me. In that kind of environment, you can become sensitive.
But of course you can.
I'm only human. Well, I'm only human. I am human.
Yeah, but even with that, because I just think of it like, how do you explain that? And I feel like if that's the environment, essentially when you're going into work, I always say sometimes as black women, we have to kind of put on our invisible suit of armor. And for that workplace, I would have definitely been zipping up real tight, because you're going into a place where you're working with someone who clearly has got an issue with you. Your first person left you, you shouldn't greet you. That doesn't set up for a very good, conducive relationship. Do you know what I mean? But clearly, you're going to make the efforts that you can, because it's your job. You've got to do what you've got to do. But internally, that's quite a lot to deal with, because you've got to still build yourself up to be like, okay, I'm going to my work today. I'm going to get on with it. This person might not be so nice to me, but I'm going to, you kind of have to coach yourself through it. And I don't think people see those things. These are things that you don't see, the unseen things that we go through in the work.
That's true.
This is why I feel like it's important to have this platform so we can discuss these type of things,
No, absolutely. And I think actually there's an area that I've not heard being discussed. And I don't know, I mean, it could just be a personal experience by all means, but also being a woman consultant and going by myself to meetings with prospective clients, I've experienced a few things as well, not racism necessarily, but sexism. Really uncomfortable situations. And that's why I made it a point after that incident that I would always have a discovery call virtually first, and then decide on whether, okay, I'm going to meet in person.
Yeah, that's a good.
I've had people in my face, very aggressive.
Really?
I've had somebody put the biggest smackaroon on my cheek, which was, I froze. I was like, that's not normal. And so these are things that I don't really hear many people talking about, but by all means, they happen. It's wonderful that, yes, you can be a consultant and have your own organisation, and you're working with the clients you want to work with, where there's synergy and such. However, getting to that point of working with clients, that you've got to go through a number of different
processes to get there. And, I get that. But I think that's interesting, and thank you for sharing that. So was there ever a time in the workplace where you felt like you wish you had spoken up about something, or a time when you did self-advocate, or maybe you wanted to stick up on behalf of somebody else? Sometimes you see injustice and you think, I want to say something about that, or maybe it's not the environment. Anything like that ever happened to you?
Yes, actually. A good couple of years back, I remember I started to exercise this bone in me to speak up and advocate, not only just for myself but for others. And so a few times, in fact, I've been known to knock on the manager's door and say, look, we need to have a conversation. And then speak on behalf and say, look, you need to manage yourself. don't put all of that on the team. I'd say over the years I've gotten better at doing that.
Again, there's a right or wrong in this. I just feel like it's
I don't think there is. But for me, as someone who was very quiet, just wants to just get things done, don't want to rock the boat. That was always me. I've come a long way with that. I will speak up.
That's good. You speak up when it's right. I think that's good. Now, I want to get your thoughts on code switching. Now, do you feel like we can live with our authentic voices in the workplace, or will we be forever kind of code switching? What are your thoughts around that?
Oh my goodness. I think I can't speak for everybody, but I imagine that for any of us that have grown up here, that were born in England, living in London, it's something that happens by default now. It's just almost ingrained. But the older that I've gotten, I'm more mindful of that. Yes, there are different environments where you may have to be mindful of, read the room. However, I'm not a fragmented person, I'm whole. This is how I speak. You either like it or you don't like it. I mean, I've had bosses years back as well, that said, oh, like you're very learned, you're very educated. So how comes and you speak different?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
This is how I speak.
Yeah. I find it so annoying that it really drives me crazy. When you say that, I'm just like, yeah, it's just a flashback to when I used to work for the General Medical Council and I was
Right.
in their press office. And so I remember getting calls and, I deal with doctors, but I also dealt with the press and stuff. But sometimes
Right.
we'd get something in public, and it was a doctor that called me, a very well-to-do doctor,
Uh-huh.
from his penthouse. I remember it very close years ago. I remember the call, and I remember helping him with something. And then towards the ending, he was like, "Oh, thank you so much. What's your name?" And I said, "Ebony." He said, "Ebony? Are you coloured?" The man was appalled. He was just like, "What?" So I was like, "I'm not coloured. I'm black." Well, you're well spoken. Like, what? What? So just the racism. It's just the racism that it just leaks out here and there. It's just like, it's just like you need to plug that leak. Like what is going on?
Literally.
So yeah, no. When I hear you say, the how you sound, yeah,
Yeah.
that's come quite a lot. But the code switching I think is interesting because I feel like you say, you're just like, you know what, I'm my whole self, and I feel like as you mature, you become more comfortable in that. But I still feel like to a degree, depending on your settings, you still need, there's going to be an element of code switching for some of our people. Depending on the settings, I feel like there's some settings that are more conducive for you to be yourself in. And then there are
Yeah.
others where you definitely know that this is not the environment to be like.
Absolutely.
You
You have to read the room. You need to,
You do.
You need to know what you're going into. But also, by the same token, I do believe that for me at least, I always like to think of myself as a thermostat. I'm setting the tone in the room,
Yeah, that's quite nice.
So,
Yeah.
but code switching, I'd be a liar if I said that it doesn't come through. It
I think
comes.
it does come
It's
through
just
quite a lot of us. But I feel like the younger ones now, they're more comfortable with being in their own skin, and they're just like, well, I'm not doing that. So I think it's really interesting.
The change is, the change is interesting. Definitely, I've noticed that those that have come up now, they are who
It's
they
quite
are.
vocal, some of them. I feel like a lot of them are vocal.
Very vocal.
I like it. I absolutely love it.
I like it.
I do feel like it's interesting because depending who you talk to, some of the young ones are like, no, I'm staying as I am, blah, blah. And others will be like, well, maybe a little bit. I think there's a little bit of both, because you can't, you're not necessarily your full self at work, but you're not like your home self. Do you know what I mean? So there's a middle ground. But I think it's fascinating. It's an interesting one.
No, definitely.
So I want to ask you, when did you become aware of the kind of color bias within the industry itself? Like for me, a lot of my work experiences, I was in-house. So therefore you've got your own organization, you're kind of dealing with people across the board. So then there were people who looked like me. There were people who, of different diversities that were in the building. When I started to go to a lot more PRE networking events is when it became very apparent to me. And particularly when I was the first Black woman to be on the Women in PR committee in the UK. Mm-hmm. So it was myself and another colleague. I was Black, she was brown. We were the first ones on the board, right? Mm-hmm. But even being there and being at a lot of the Women in PR UK events, it was like a sea of white women. And I was just like, this is fascinating. And going to industry events like CIPR, it'd be like, it'd be very white. I noticed it very much there. There's a few of us that'd be like, oh, yeah, hey, but for the most part, I noticed it then. And then obviously, of course, CIPR, PRCA will put out reports about the stats and things like that. So for you, was you always aware, or was it a case of finding out in a similar situation?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely aware. That's for sure. Definitely was made aware very early on.
Yeah.
I'd say, like yourself, with going to a number of networking events or talks that took place that were hosted by the likes of CIPR or IPR even back then, and the PRCA, sometimes you're the only one that's there, but for me, although I was, of course, sometimes you'd be, the first couple of times I was a bit taken aback. I guess for me, I had already prepared myself for such because I hadn't actually seen anyone like me doing PR up until until actually 2003 when I did my first placement that was the first time where I was, and only actually probably out of all of the agencies that I had been at, where I'd actually seen a really wonderful mixture of races and also sexes within an organization.
Right.
So that was my first experience. So I was quite fortunate in that sense. But in terms of the networking events and such, of course, a lot of time it's just myself. And I'm like, where is everyone else? Where is everyone else? And I think even if we look back at some of the, like you said, reports that have come out, not seeing things actually be actioned, it's taken such a long time. And I think it's so beautiful that fast forward now, you know, we're in the 21st century, and now you're seeing a number of different organizations, you know, that have emerged because there's been a space, there's a gap, there's a need to spotlight, just even like yourself with this platform here. We exist, but for whatever reason, of course, when people think of comms and PR, or at least many years ago, it was bald head, white man, blonde woman, blue eyes. That was the environment.
Yeah.
And those, you know, the allies would also, you know, say exactly the same. Those that chose to recognise and speak on these things.
Yeah, it was a fact. It was a fact. I think it's interesting. There are, like you said, a lot of the changes have come because people have had to create them themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. Like you said, a lot of report recommendations. Hence why I got kind of fed up of reading the stats, which is why I was like, well, we're actually here. So how about I've got my podcast already. So I was like, let me do a special series that just spotlights them and us. Because actually, I'm fed up of hearing, oh, it's 92%. What about people that are here? We are here.
We are here. We have been here.
We have been here for a while, you know?
A long, long time. Because I think, even when I think back to, again, before I'd even got into the industry officially, when I was still at university, one of my last placements I had was actually up north. And one of the patterns that I'd found, because I'd always try and interview a few people, wherever I went, you know, wherever I worked, and the common denominator, like the common story that was given as to how they got into the industry was, oh, I just fell into it.
Yeah, people say it all the time. Yeah,
but it used to really grind my gears. Because I'm like, I've been pursuing this for X amount of time.
Like I studied, I went here, went there, and here comes you.
I knew what this was, you know, and I've worked towards this. I was in the library. My course teacher couldn't help me, but I'm here. And where's the ditch? Where's the ditch? The reason why I bring that up as well is just because, of course, a lot of the time as well, when you look at in terms of hiring, it was literally, it was a lot of nepotism.
Nepotism is this industry has been built on nepotism.
Literally, and whether your face fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on who the clientele were that the organisation was serving, would, I guess, determine the environment. But I remember actually, so in probably, I think it would have been about 2013, either 2012 or 2013. At the time, it doesn't exist anymore. I think it's become something else. Forgive me, getting brain fog now. But PRCA had a diversity committee where we would meet up. At the time, it was myself, and there was a young black gentleman who he was actually a student, and he's now doing wonderful things in the industry since then. And there's one or two Asians, and then it was being chaired and co-chaired by a brown person and a Caucasian. And I always remember there was a conversation that was had about the representation needing to reflect the community that you're trying to reach out to.
Yeah.
Like, for example, actually I shouldn't call it a brand, but let's take a well-known drink, drinks brand.
We talk about PR, that's fine. Just, yeah, but I know what you mean. You do have
You
to
know,
think about the audience completely.
you've got to think about them.
No,
How can you speak to an audience that you don't even engage with on a daily basis?
exactly.
That's the reason why up until today in 2025, you will find that there are campaigns that are signed off and they're tone deaf.
Hmm.
And then there's an uproar that comes because no one, no one is in that decision room that needs to be there to say, actually,
Yeah,
that's not right. You can't do
exactly
that.
that. Exactly
You
that.
know,
It's happened. This thing happened. It happened with H&M. Remember the top with a monkey on it? It's
yeah,
happened with a few things. There've been quite a few faux pas where you think that clearly nobody was in the room. The Heinz advert, just most recently, you know,
with the bride and
yeah,
with
the single mom, like
lack
where's
of
the dad?
yeah,
Like what's
lack of a
going on?
father
Like
figure.
what's happening here? So
Yeah,
again, these things happen, and you're right. Like you said, it's representation. It matters. It really does matter.
it definitely does. It definitely does.
This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
Okay, so moving you on slightly, ethnicity pay gap. I'm sure you're aware of it, but what are your thoughts around that? And are you aware that the PRCA Reed has put out a report on it as well? Because
Yes,
it's an issue, and I think what they're calling for obviously is for just level up and do what's good. I just
do
don't
this
see
the right thing at the end of the
decent
day.
people. I don't see how you can just look at someone and be like, oh, well, they're doing the same thing, but they're brown, they're black. Well, yeah, let's take off 10K there. Sorry, like what is going on here?
It doesn't make any sense at all. It hasn't made any sense for decades. But again, because of a wonderful generation that that we are now experiencing, that we're living in, people are fed up, and those that have, that are coming through now, they're not going to take it anymore. So I'm really glad that people are speaking up, and that, and I'm my hope is that they do, that organisations do the right thing. We are talented, we are gifted, we're experienced, we're educated, we can do the work probably 10 times better than the person that fell down a ditch and,
Yeah,
and ended up in a job.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Rightly should be paid correctly.
I agree. No, thank you for that. And we touched on it a little bit earlier. But what are your thoughts on allyship? Like, what does that really mean to you?
They're there. They are there. But I think if I guess within this industry, there's few and far between. For my personal experience. If we go back to what I mentioned about one of the groups, the diversity group that the PRCA had once upon a time. There were a few Caucasians that did show up. They wanted to be a part of it, and also just to say, actually, because when I think about it, because diversity, a lot of the time, we all just get pushed into this one big space as like disability and such. But this particular group was to do with
Okay,
race.
so it wasn't because the report that I'm referring to, PRCA's, that's the Race Ethnicity Equity Board. It wasn't that, was it? Was they
No, that came after.
later? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's why I'm like, my brain, I'm like, oh.
I don't remember what it was called. Yeah.
Right. But so at that point, there were one or two, but that would attend. And like I said, it was also chaired by a Caucasian person, but that was all that I really saw for a long time. So, I mean, it's good to have allies, of course, in light of 2020, George Floyd, a lot of organisations started to shake things up. All of a sudden, they realised that they didn't have anything in place, any policies in place to to manage DEI. They didn't. It wasn't a business idea. It wasn't part of the agenda. And so I guess I take everything with a pinch of salt when it comes to allyship, because it's either you get it or you don't at the end of the day.
Yeah,
But
and
everything is a decision.
Yeah, essentially, you're saying that the allies, if you're going to be an ally, be proactive and take action. Don't just be the one that comes along and just sits there looking pretty. I get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's true. Yes, I should have been more succinct with that. Yes, be more proactive, allies.
Be more proactive. Okay. No, I get what you mean. I do. So moving into you a bit more, what motivates you? What inspires you to keep going?
Oh, okay. What motivates me? I think the fact that I'm up and breathing. My eyes, I can feel my hands.
Yeah.
I know that there's still work to do.
Yeah.
Literally. I think
well, those who are listening, Nadia had some health challenges. That's why she says about her hands, in case you might not have understood why she said that. Just for context. Yeah. Sorry, Nadia.
No problem. So, I mean, for me, the motivation, a lot of it is stemmed from my upbringing as well. I'd say my dad always had this this phrase that he would always use whenever I'd come home from school, come home from work. Are you winning? And I'd always just respond with yes. And so that's been my moniker throughout. Is that I'm winning.
That's so cute, though. I like that. Encouragement, you know what I mean?
Like, definitely. And I think my faith as well, knowing that when, if you look at my journey through comms, PR, where it started from, 14 years old, internet was barely domesticated in the home. Actually, I don't even think I had internet at home at that point. No, I didn't. But in school, we had the internet, and when I think of the fact that seed was sown at that time, and I'm still here, and I'm still pressing in and pressing on, I'm like, it has to be for a reason. I have to keep going. That's what motivates me, is young Nadia, 14 years old, learning about this area of PR and just going for it. And a lot of the times I would try and recapture what that wonder was like, of that confidence that I had as a 14-year-old, got the goals to call up a big organisation, writing to production companies like Granada TV and BBC, and being told, oh no, you need to be 18 and an undergrad to be able to come and do work experience here.
Yeah.
How things have changed today. Honestly, you can get a placement in some of the most amazing spaces. It wasn't like that back then, and that wasn't to do with race. That was now to do with status of where you are, and age back then. But what motivates me is that at every hurdle, even when it was really tough, I've kept going, and nothing's fallen apart. As I've said recently in a post on LinkedIn, my business, currently, it's standing on matchsticks. That's enough for me to keep pressing on.
It's standing. No, I love that. It's so funny. But I like the sentiment behind what you're saying. I get that. So what would you say you found the most challenging so far in your journey?
I think for me, the challenge, and when you say the journey in terms of
your career journey,
or
your kind of career journey, and it could be maybe whether it been setting up the business, or it might it could be anything along your journey, essentially.
Cool. I think there's been a few challenges. There's been a few challenges. One believing in myself, because like I said at the very beginning of our convo, I felt very unqualified, not to do the work, but in terms of running a consultancy and showing up for myself and for my clients, getting those clients, pitching to them, not knowing all the ins and outs and having to work that out.
Yeah.
Because even when back in 2012, gosh, there weren't any PR blogs either at that point. They started to come
After that.
around that time, within maybe late 2012, 2013. The US had a few blogs, and I mean, that's always, the US are always doing a lot of different wonderful things, right? But I think that believing in myself and what I have to offer, that was one of the earlier challenges that I had. Pitching for business and then going through, the proposals, and everything sounds like it's going to work out, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Learning how to deal with that and not take it personal. That is not me. It's a them. It's you. And just trying to not dwell on it and just move on to the next. I think that's also been a personal challenge. Yeah. Also, the isolation. And I guess this is where people say, like, be careful of what you say. Growing up, I as a teen, I always used to say, oh, I quite like my solitude. I just want to be in solitude. And then finding myself, working by myself for a lot of the time. That was a challenge, but I enjoy it now, and I have associates, that when the work is full and there's
absolutely
that I can reach out to. But I know for me, those areas, I guess, were linked to identity and believing in myself. Mm-hmm. Those are the real big challenges, and maybe it's because I didn't see anyone doing this. Also, in terms of peers around me, like friends and such, I was the only one that was out here trying to do this whole business thing. And of course, fast forward to today, everyone's an entrepreneur, everyone's a business owner, everyone's this and that, and it's wonderful. But it was very lonely the early days, which I'm sure you could also relate to. The main thing, they were challenges. They're not a challenge now.
Yeah, well, that's good. But it's also good to share, because somebody else along the journey that might be thinking, oh yeah, I kind of feel like that now, or maybe I feel like that, because I can understand all those parts. So all very valid. Now, putting your employee hat on, right? Sure. What would make a good working environment? Like, what does good DEI look like? Even though we know DEI is a hot topic now with Trump, rolling it back and has us wage a war against DEI. But based on your experience, what does good DEI look like?
I think for me, good DEI looks like ensuring that you consider all experiences, all backgrounds, all talents, as as a whole, as opposed to divvying up groups and trying to tick boxes, and making sure that you have a policy in place, not waiting for world events to take place, but actually have a policy in place to work with, so that when things come up that you feel compelled to speak on because everyone else is speaking on, that you're doing it from a place of integrity. That's the first and foremost, I think, and that has to come from top down as well. I use the ideology of me being a thermostat. I need leaders to be the thermostat and ensure that when it comes to DEI, when it comes to inclusion and equity, that they're the ones that are setting the tone. It drips down
Yeah,
like
it's
to
top,
those with a boots on the
down.
ground,
Yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. So
you know?
top down, but also bottom up. I feel like it needs to be going.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. You know,
yeah.
all the
I
cogs
agree with
in
you.
motion.
Yeah,
And I also think what would make the work environment healthy from that aspect as well is to see more representation of black and brown leadership within, within the top office of an
yeah,
organization.
absolutely.
I want to see more people that look like me, black
Yeah,
people, as decision makers,
yeah,
making actual decisions, whether they're working in house or whether they're working in an agency, and not a token
mhm,
position, or oh well, we needed to fill this box and so we're going to put you in this place. No, some of these people have been working for years, for decades, and they're darn good at what they do, and they deserve to be in senior positions and to be paid the same way that
yeah.
someone else who fell into
Counterparts.
the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Where
know,
your white counterpart gets, you should be able to get the same. So absolutely, absolutely,
absolutely.
absolutely. So I want to get a bit into your proudest moments now. So can you tell me, what has been your proudest moment? It could be work, personal, and you could include a career highlight if you like.
Actually, yeah, no, I would say my proudest moment would be, when it comes to business, is when I had to put put the work down
Okay.
and trust that the business could continue to earn its keep
Yeah.
without me being active in there, and then to see it that it's still standing on its little matchsticks, but it's standing. But
Amazing.
I think that that's definitely a highlight of my
You
personal
should be absolutely,
career.
absolutely proud of that.
But proud moment, of course, would be when I actually went back to the Glass Hive full time
Yeah.
and not given up. I tell you, there's been some seasons for sure. Everything from trademarking my business and then having one of the biggest organizations in the world saying, no, we don't want you to trademark, and then fighting that myself.
Wow.
And they backed off, and there was no reason for them to stop me from trademarking, because actually the story with the Glass Hive as well, where the name is concerned, um, later on when I set up the website, I started to work on the website late 2012, launched it early 2013, went to buy the domain, and it wasn't available. And yet I'd searched for it. I'd done the Google search, but it wasn't available. Later on, would find out when I did a bit of digging that it was about to expire. Someone had bought this in the US, but
Okay.
They didn't have any digital footprint. So I was the first with a digital footprint
Yeah.
online with the name, the Glass Hive. So there is an organization, it's a family owned kiln in, like the ovens for blowing glass,
Mhm.
that exists in the USA called the Glass Hive.
Okay.
They had the domain, and they renewed it while
Okay.
I was there waiting to to
Got
get
it
it.
there quickly. Yeah.
And they're there. Interestingly enough, there's been a number of organisations that have used the name since as well, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But in terms of being able to acquire that trademark, that was also a real proud
Real
moment.
proud moment. Yeah, because you thought that by yourself as well. So well done to you.
Yeah, you
When
know,
you see big organizations, sometimes you can be fearful of that. But so I'm glad
yeah.
that you did push up and carry on with that.
I said, no, I've come too far. I've
Yeah.
come too
Come
far for
too far.
that, you
And I'm
know.
married to this name. I'm keeping it. Okay.
Yeah, literally. And it's crazy because that was, goodness, over like almost 10 years ago when that
That
happened.
happened. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd say that's another proud moment. And also, I think going back to the very beginning, another proud moment in my career would be acquiring my very first PR work placement, my internship.
Oh, oh
I,
yeah.
I hold that dearly, and receiving my first cuttings. I still got
Oh,
them.
do you still have them?
I still have them. I should have had them ready to show you.
Oh, it's so funny.
I still got them. I mean, it was like Hartlepool and and all the regional
Right? Yeah.
newspapers
Oh,
uh,
that's so
and magazines.
interesting, though. You're so that's nice, though. That's also nice. That's very nice. So, what are your thoughts in terms of how you think the industry will evolve over the next few years? Because there's a lot of talk about AI and things like that. So, what are your thoughts at the moment? And obviously, there's also this, America that seems to be backing off from DEI. So, do you think, as they always say, if America has a cold, then we catch it.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think?
I think we live in very interesting times.
I do.
Let's start there. But I think it's beautiful to see how the industry is changing. There's a lot more cohesive collaboration taking place now just because we're all digital.
Yeah.
But I think that especially with the introduction of AI now becoming so domesticated and used in different organizations and industries, we also need to stay abreast of that as comms professionals. When it comes to data, that's important. We need to be at the forefront of that as well when it comes to our industry evolving. But for me, I think where AI is concerned, we have to taking it back to public relations. For me, public relations has always been about people and about relationships, right? That's everyone would agree that that's what it is. And I think we need to be, we need to tread mindfully. I'm not going to say carefully, but tread mindfully in this area because relationships you have to have a human connection. And so what I hope is that we don't lose the essence of ourselves and become reliant on a tool. It's a great tool to have, but remember, it's a tool. Nothing beats communicating and getting to the root of a cause by having dialogue like we're having right now.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. So, what would you say are the key lessons you've learned throughout your career? There may be like 2 or 3 key lessons you've learned.
Okay. I think the key lessons: show up for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be disheartened when things don't work out, and keep sowing seeds.
Yeah.
It might not flourish, it might not bloom, it might not do anything for ages, but it's only a matter of time. Nothing beautiful comes, out of thin air. You've got to plow, sow, and repeat. Let's keep on sowing.
I like that. I think they're really nice lessons. And what advice would you give to young people of colour, particularly who are considering entering the industry?
Do it. It's one of the most rewarding industries that you can be in. And there's been so much cultivating over the decades that the soil is good for you to actually now be a part of the industry. So don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn or on Instagram or or Twitter, whichever platform that you choose to use. Just reach out, ask questions, just show up for yourself and give it a go. If you don't like it, no one's going to tell you off for that.
Yeah.
It's an experience at the end of the day that could potentially help you later on down your career path. So this is the best time to join the industry.
Good advice. I like that. Thank you. And where do you actually go for industry support? Like, for example, I'm a member of the UK Black Comms Network, CIPR. I don't know if you're a member of any of those or whether you have your own little private groups. Sometimes people have their own private groups that they have and WhatsApp groups again. have the community of people they go to go and get support, or just, you know, a little bit of advice or pep talk.
So goodness me, I think I was probably the 7th member of UK Black Comms Network. So I've been a member of the CIPR. Well, actually, at the time it was IPR. I haven't been a member, but I've gone to programs over the years. But it's been a while, mind you. But I was a member of a PRCA. I took a break from all of these things with all that's been going on with me, and you know, health-wise recently. But I think being a part of these organisations can only do good for your career, and also just for your own, you know, morale as well, just to see the good that we're doing in the industry, and being able to network and share stories and hear how other people are making waves.
Absolutely. And sometimes share stories. Like I go to quite a few UK Black Comms Network events, and they are really helpful. It's really interesting just to see people just come together and share their own little stories, or maybe you're experiencing this and you can, you know, relate to somebody else. It's just like a nice little safe space is what it kind of feels like. So it's one of my favorite places. So I really like that, and I'm glad that you're a member. So that's really good. And I will
say, this year, having not been able to partake in anything for a little while now, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to in 2025, which is just to re-engage with everybody in the networks and join with all the memberships and all the membership groups going. I'll be there in 2025 for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And for anyone listening, if you're interested, the PRCA have a resource called PRISM, and it's Public Relations, Inclusion, Support and Mentoring. So basically it's a mentoring scheme that is brought to you by the PRCA's Race and Equity Board. And it offers free structured mentoring. So if you're interested in that, then do get in touch. And obviously UK BCN, they also offer mentorship as well. So there's lots of resources out there if you want some help. So moving into our last section, which is mindset. Okay, so how do you deal with the internal mind war? Like, how do you deal with managing self-limiting beliefs?
Ooh. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one. Love that.
I'm a work in progress, as the saying goes, when it comes to that area. But I'd like to say that I'm a lot better than I was, say, 6-7 years ago. And I definitely would credit that to my business coach I had at the time, when I delved back into the Glass Hive full time. But I think when it comes to mindset, I have to tie that into my faith as well. I'm a believer of Christ, and for me, although there are times where doubt may want to set in, I've always had this phrase that I picked up from one of my uncles, where he always would say, "Doubt your doubt," and that's always been my thing from my late teens. Doubt your doubt, and so that's my stance, you know, that I start with. But also, when it comes to things like limiting self-beliefs and imposter syndrome, these things happen at different stages. They're not a bad thing, but it's about knowing and identifying why it's showing up and dealing with it as quickly as you can. And so for me, it's about quickly trying to remind myself, ground myself in who I am, what I'm about, and just trying to press on, really, at the end of the day. But again, I think for me personally, this is very much in line with my faith as well, that everything that's going on around me, my business, everything that's going on around my family and my peers, it's all out of my control. You know, certain things, excuse me, let me correct myself. Certain things are out of my control. I can only control myself and how I respond to things at the end of the day. And there's trust that there is a bigger, there's a bigger plan, and that God will always make sure that even though that there are some stumbling blocks, I'm still going to get to wherever it is that I need to get to.
Yeah, no, I get that. I really get that. And then looking back over your journey, would you do it all over again?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I would.
That is good. That's good. That's good. We like to hear that. Okay, we like to hear that. That's good.
I would.
That's good.
My story is my story.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and I'm really blessed and grateful that I have it. Like, no one else has my story, and that I think that's the thing that makes it exciting. And although there's been tears, there's been rejections, there's been, a number of different things. There's been, I'm still standing. There's definitely more highlights to come, and why wouldn't I want to do this again? I think if I was to give up, I would have given up a long time ago. But like I said earlier, like, I committed more than half of my life to this industry and this pursuit, and I'll continue. It may look different over the course of the years to come, but communications, PR, will always forever have my heart.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And then, what's the best and worst advice you've been given?
Oh gosh. I've had one or two actually. Worst advice actually ties in with my diagnosis that I had.
Okay.
And someone actually said to me, close your business down straight away.
Really? Wow, that is terrible.
The advice I got. That was the advice I got, was I should close my business, and I was devastated. I let that really get to me, because of course there were different things going on.
You was going through a lot at the time, so it's like you don't want to hear that. Like, goodness.
Yeah, and this I think I'd just started chemo at that point. Right. And I'm calling them for some advice. Yeah, and that's what came through. That was the worst advice ever. That I should close my business. I didn't. I'm still here. And then good advice, or best advice. I guess best advice, doubt your doubt.
Yes, from your uncle, right? I think that was great advice.
From my uncle, yeah. That was from my uncle.
Advice. I like that. I'm going to be nicking that. Thank you, uncle. I like that one.
You're welcome. That was my uncle Prince.
Oh, that's his name. Like it. And my last question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented to help you along your career journey?
Yes. Rules for me include setting boundaries, and knowing when to put things down, and knowing when to pick them up again. Mm-hmm. Also, I'd say planning well is paramount. Whether you are a consultant, whether you're a stay-at-home mum or stay-at-home dad, plan well, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things going on vying for our attention, and we need to be able to control our own environment, and be able to comfortably make adjustments where necessary, rather than having someone dictating or an event dictating your next steps when it comes to moving forward.
Yeah.
And also continue to upskill. It's an important thing. It's key. I did a course recently, just before the end of the year, and it was just a short boot camp on TikTok. But it's just about, seeing what's out there, and yes, it may not serve a purpose in the season that you're currently in, but I can bet you that a few years down the line, things that you're learning now, they will definitely serve you well and serve those that you're around at that point in time.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, thank you so much for sharing those. It has been
You're welcome.
wonderful speaking to you today, Nadia. So for those
Thank
who
you.
want to connect with you, where can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yes,
How then where to find you on socials?
by all means. Okay. So, I mean, on LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm starting to engage again. I took a bit of a hiatus, but please reach out, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm open. You know, like I've got an open inbox as well. I'm always willing, willing to have a conversation here and there when time permits, of course.
Yeah, cool.
Um, and you can also find me on www.theglasshive.co.uk.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share with me your journey. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, of course, I will be back with some more wonderful guests from the world of comms. Until then, stay tuned and stay blessed, people. And bye for now.
Bye.